Okay.
Cantammi una segnale, Melanie. Okay. Sorry? Jaff għandun għadilej. Fil-kas jek nassaw, nistema?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this discussion, this online talk that we're having this evening with regards to Pawlu Mizzi's exhibition entitled Wiċċ Imb Wiċċ, Failing Social Distancing. It's currently open at Abba in Kamra ta' Fuq until May the 18th, and we're here today to discuss with Pawlu Mizzi himself, Dr. Grech and Dr. Clive Zammit, to discuss the thinking and the concepts lying behind, underlying this artwork and this project. So to start off, Pawlu, so from what I can gather, this project has its origins from your research. If I'm not mistaken, from 2013, right?
Yes.
So obviously in 2013, you had no idea that there would be a pandemic going on here. Of course, but it is interesting to see how that kind of ended up resulting in this particular project, which is very much related to the current context and the contemporary social dynamics.
Yes. So, hello everyone. Basically, in 2013, during my research, I was looking into the concept of multiple portraiture, or visualizing the portrait of a person in multiple views, and that was actually the inspiration which led myself and curator Melanie Erickson to think of looking into that concept once again, but in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. I then realized that I could also experiment with exposing more than one person in the same frame, and that is where it all started, and I wanted to investigate that possibility of depicting more than one person in one picture.
Yeah, that's the whole show to collective portrait. And in fact, what is interesting is that from what I can see, it's touching, given that the origins of this particular project comes from the social media platform, Facebook, the most popular one, and it's a digital project in itself as well. So it's almost a digital commentary on the digital aspect that is part of our society. Maybe Dr. Grech has something to say about this with regards to how we project ourselves on social media versus how we perceive ourselves to be internally, maybe, or how we think we are perceived by others. Because of course in here we can see that people's portraits, individual portraits, so to speak, are based on how they would like to present themselves. And in this kind of context, it's very much obviously relevant. Any comments about that?
Okay, when Pawlu told me about what he was doing, I first thought it was I guess a selfie project. Okay, and which is the way that a lot of people, especially young people, choose. Old people too, actually. Anybody who's got access to one of these devices. That's the way we represent ourselves out there. But as we know, our identity is never belongs to us. Our identity is what other people make of us. What I think is interesting here is this idea of multiple identities superimposed on everybody else. So, and for me, it gave me this idea that ever since COVID-19 struck us, we've all been struggling with this concept of keeping away from others. So the idea of social distancing, it has become part of modern academic. It's one of the most dehumanizing things which I think has happened, at least in my life. So seeing it represented right now, like almost like I'm looking at pictures, I'm myopic as it happens, okay? So looking at these multiple pictures on top of each other, trying to trace who is who behind these multiple layers. It's for me, it was first very disconcerting. So I think it's a very interesting, clever, disconcerting, like very much of its time, because we don't know what we're going to make of each other once, we're all vaccinated. In fact, look, this is the interesting one. I mean, here are the oldies who have been vaccinated without a mask, as Clive said, the expendable.
But it started out being the vulnerable. Now you get good stuff there.
Sorry, that's sorry, everyone.
Yes, and just to sort of add on to what Alex was saying, I think what's really interesting here is also the idea, as you were saying, we sort of, there's this culture of the selfie, so always, again, kind of, emphasizing who I am, maybe also in reaction to, the bombardment of, who I could be and all the sort of, suggestions of what I am not and who others are. So on the one hand, social media gives me this possibility to emphasize who I am, project who I am. Whereas this project seems to reverse that tendency or that process where at least I imagine that people getting into this knew what they were going in for, and in a way what they have accepted to go in for is for themselves to be more or less fragmented or more or less exploded or yeah. So there's this tension in a way here. We're putting faces there, but the faces are at the same time, they're not clear there, and it makes me think. Pawlu was also telling us about the process of getting these works together, and also mentioned that some people also pulled out in a way. And I'd like to hear more about that, because sort of this maybe throws some light or more light on that tension.
Yes. Yeah, I think the process should be explained, because I think that's very interesting.
Yes, should I? Yes, okay. So yes, basically in the last few days of last year, I launched a Facebook group. It was basically a call for anyone to subscribe and join this, it was like people queuing to register, like we're doing for the vaccine, So people were literally registering. I was accepting one by one in this, list, in this queue, and by sticking to that random approach, I was literally grouping the first 10 people, the second 10 people, the third 10 people. So each 10 people who subscribed through their Facebook profile were, providing me with their profile picture through which I was able to compose these artworks. So yes, each frame is made up of 10 people or less. And less means that there were instances where people subscribed to the project, but then when I came to pick the profile picture, I realized that that person has opted out. Mm-hmm. So I respected the decision, of course. I made a reference to the participants still in this exhibition here, but obviously the moving out of the participation inflicted like a paintbrush which is missing, So each layer here is very important for the final outcome of the work.
Right. So in fact this aspect I think is very much related to the fluidity of identity, so to speak, that we don't, like our identity is quite fluid and It depends how you see it as well. And from what we can see even in the current political context, maybe on a more, at least in the Western world, where there is this much more explicit clash between what's real, what's not, what's deemed to be empirical, what's deemed to be socially constructed, for example. It's revolving around identity. And from here, what I could see from these works, it's very much exhibiting this paradox in one. You have something which is there, real, but at the same time, I mean, at the same time, it's not quite abstract. So the abstract isn't I don't know if it's something which triggers any an emotion in this regard, on what we deem to be the real self versus and the absence of the people that opted out, maybe that presence of that absence kind of created a new dimension, maybe.
Look, it's a disconcerting, for me it's a disconcerting set of images, okay? Because I mean, normally we're used to taking a picture and then putting filters on it, so we look more beautiful, or we go black and white, or whatever it is, okay? This is a case where somebody has provided a picture and then trusted Pawlu to do something with it, but not quite knowing what the other thing he's going to do with it. No? Which for me I think is an interesting process. I don't know how many people dropped out. I don't think there's a lot of people have dropped out.
5, 6.
Yeah, so 5, 6 out of how many?
Of 270.
So that's basically nothing. The other thing is they're trusting the platform. They're trusting that Pawlu is asking them to come in via a platform that I don't trust, for instance, called Facebook. Okay, because we all know that whatever data is submitted by us on Facebook, or is meeting the picture of my son, Clive saying to do the same thing. As soon as that's on the platform, the algorithm means that they can do it. So there are two different types of trust happening here. One is unconscious, because we're all used to sharing pictures on Facebook. Any type of there, or other people do it, and we don't even realize that they tag us without our permission. That's one. The second one is trusting Pawlu to do something with his artist hat on. And I think if we go back to the whole identity issue, I think that's what people are going to be struggling with. It's bad enough us, I am not who I am who you think I am. We only met 5 minutes ago, so nobody think I am. But I am who you think I am. Okay, well, so I've had 59 years of life and I think I'm somebody else, and Clive probably knows me as somebody else. Here you're having that kind of disconcerting process, almost like accelerating. Then the other thing which I think is interesting is COVID, because at the time that these people are taking these pictures, they're being told, don't meet in a place like this. This is almost revolutionary now. In proximity, as I said, the expendable and the ones that we vaccinated. So if anybody came and took pictures of this, of us 5 months ago, we'd probably been arrested by saying. So think of how insane what I'm telling you is. Well, back when 2 years ago, I had a drink over here in the bar. That's the end of it. So I think these pictures are very much of their time, and I think if we could fast forward, I don't know, 2 years time, maybe you just look at it. What is it? On the other hand, we don't know what that future, the post-COVID future, is going to be. This doesn't change, so irrespective of COVID, there are some things which never change.
That's our only next.
I hope this isn't a sign of some sort. I mean, you can explain the context where we are about, right? That we're next to a church, and this place is above. I mean, it's a very interesting location.
Yeah, I think we can use this 1 minute for this cause. I mean, basically, we're being hosted here by Mr. Antoine Farrugia, who is the owner of New Life Bar in Abba. And basically, he turned the first floor room into a gallery whose concept is run by Melanie Eriksson, the curator, as Art Sweden. That's the art name of the curation project. So basically, everyone is invited to come over in the center of Abba to visit this project.
Yeah, so as we were talking about, it's about the identity itself and how it changes. But now I would like to move a bit further with regards to how we create the myth of what we perceive to be the A self, right? And the collective, when we think about the collective and the individual, we tend to see them in a binary, as a dichotomy. In here, I think we're seeing them, as something which is quite part of the same organism or entity. We're seeing something which you can see it as a singular and a singularity, and at the same time, you're seeing the plurality in it at the same time. So, I think this is quite connected to how we perceive even social groups as well, or different forms of groups, and how we categorize social groups as well. Because as you have alluded to, even in your commentary about this, about seeing people from different cultures being brought together, and how we were kind of challenging these perceived differences of the time. Anyone would like to kind of say something about it?
Yes, I think, well, it's obviously very important for us, one of us, to have some idea of our own identity. Now, how we construct that process of coming to some form of idea of who we are, who I am, and how I perceive myself, the way I want to project myself. That process is another thing, but I think it's very important for us to have some idea of who we are. And I think what this is bringing together is actually two processes which are undermining the possibility for us to have some form of stable identity. One is the most obvious and the most recent, which is, the pandemic, and which makes us question who we are, how we change, especially, once we can't meet our friends anymore, we have, we've got restrictions on, how to walk in the street and where and what to wear and what to wear. So that's already sort of challenging our, former, maybe more stable idea of who we are. But at the same time, the process that this is using, the digital process, in itself is, the development, the coming about of the digital world, in a way has an undermining force on all forms of stability, all forms of, traditionally, culture as monolithic, as, linear, prior to the digital. So now that that foundation is changing, I think that in itself is also, lending to this kind of fragmentation. So I think this brings it together. When you think of classical portraiture, where the emphasis is like you were saying, to find or to show or to project, the real self. Who I really know who this person in the portrait really was, the essence of this personality or something like that. And this is going completely contrary to that idea, to that trend. And so my question would be, what this raises is, what is feeding into this sort of, in a way, counter current, to really fragmentize and rather than trying to find the picture of the essence of the self.
I think there's something also quite interesting. What Pawlu was doing is he's superimposing people's identities on top of each other when these people don't know who they are. So you could have, so I'm trying to see him as a female there, but I don't know, maybe there's another male face underneath that. I think the other thing is that these people don't know each other. So they're trusting this guy, but in a way Pawlu was saying that it's sequentially. So it's almost like random. And yet who when Clive and I were trying to see these people there, and we recognized some of them, we could see that the kind of waves of people who would come in, there's a tendency that some of them would have known each other, because somebody would have said, Pawlu's running this thing, go and bring your picture. So you might have like an enclave of university people, an enclave of people who hang around within some bar or other. And yet at the same time, what the pandemic's been trying to tell us is social distance from those you normally meet and your friends, and just hang around with your immediates, your family. Even if you don't like your family, you're stuck with those people. No? And this again gives you, so this is what Clive was saying, like everything is turned upside down. Whilst in life we go through this life with so-called theories of strong ties and weak ties. Okay? Here you've got basically, most of them are weak ties. People vaguely know each other before we develop stuff. Super important of each other. And you have to trust that even if you think you're the most beautiful person on the planet, you might be, or even you might have been followed by something you really can't stand in life, in a place like this. Okay?
In fact, there was someone who turned up in the gallery who was if I had participated, the first question I would ask you all is, who are the other 9 people? Yeah, so that was quite revealing actually, because we tend to protect ourselves by trying to know before who we're going to spend time with. So that is one thing which came up when the exhibition was on. Another interesting suggestion was the idea of narcissism. I mean, there were people who participated who came along just to find themselves. And when they realized that they weren't so relevant in that frame, they almost went down the stairs a bit disappointed. You could see their face, you know? It's like, I should have been more prominent. So, yeah. That's
in fact, I was coming to that. It's like, it's almost like a power struggle happening here. It's like some might have accepted that they are relinquishing some power on their identity when they accepted to be part of the group. Some may have thought that they might automatically become more prominent because they feel that they have some special features. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, it depends on the intention and the motivation and the person.
And the awareness, I guess.
And the awareness of what it actually involves. Yes. And in fact, I think this is also it's a metaphor for our continuous power struggles. Whenever we are within a group, whether we know the people in the group or whether we don't. And the fact that some people try to see who would be with them because they automatically would like to associate with a certain type of people more than others, or because obviously it's human nature. So yeah, it is this question. So when we question how power works, and when we automatically think that power is something, coming from above, and simply within a portrait. I don't know if that's something which is of interest, maybe, or something that you end up.
I think this point is very important because obviously it's very important for us in terms of, let's call them, the power games, but just the social interaction.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in terms of power, but power is always there in a way. And it's very important for us to be able to read the face, to interpret, the person, the gestures, or of persons we know and even persons we don't know. So whether they're hostile or they're friendly or whatever. So we invest a lot in reading a face, constantly reading gestures and interpreting. So it's very important for us for the face to be clear, to be, we also at the same time invest a lot of energy in trying, obviously, to make clear to ourselves who we are, our own identity. So, and I think what is happening here, we mentioned that this is a bit disconcerting at first. When you look at these pictures and they seem like faces all over each other and all that. And I think this this disturbing element comes a bit from that challenge. You know, that sort of, looking at these pictures, I might, and expecting to find myself, and not, more than, or maybe apart from that element of narcissism, I would say that, that it's more a reaction to that, that sort of being challenged by the fact that, I've sort of been stabilized, or, someone's like pulled the rug from under my feet, and suddenly I might start realizing that, maybe my identity is made up of something of the sort. Maybe, what I thought, that, or if I thought that I had some hold on who I am, or my personality, my identity. Maybe this may start, sort of make me realize that maybe my identity is not that within my power, or, within my grasp. And it will obviously be disturbing and challenging, and people react to that in different ways. But I think it, once it can have this also empowering effect when one starts allowing oneself to let go of that image that I have to be in charge and of my identity and continuously sort of know who I am and allow for the fact that yes, my identity is fluid, it's made up of all these superimpositions, and different aspects of it may come into focus at different times or different contexts, and I think that in itself can be empowering after maybe this phase of disruption in a way. So I would say these are disruptive in that way, but not in a destructive way. Yeah.
I think two things about it. I think one is it reminds you also. I think something you get with age. Okay, just think about understanding that you're not in control of your identity. That it's somebody else is going to go through. It takes time to realize that. Sadly, and you realize that too late. or by the time you realize it, then hopefully you don't care. Then it's just too late because you really don't care. I think this thing about having other people's identities superimposed on yourself, I think is really interesting. Especially if it's, whether it's male or female or transgender, or so it's a question of sex, or you think you're beautiful and somebody else isn't, or you think you're ugly and somebody else isn't, so what am I now?
Different skin tones.
Yeah, different skin tones, different whatever, different races, different. Okay, so I think that's quite interesting. Also, you can't see it. So these paintings are actually suspended from the ceiling, so you can actually see them rotate. A couple of them. So you kind of look at them and say, I think I get this one, and then if we get it, it kind of rotates, and then something else comes in. In a way, it reminded me. Kids, what are those things you could do? There are a couple of things that you can. And if that's what needs to happen, you could almost have to fade one picture from one to the other. Here you're getting the same kind of people's faces fading one into the other. So I think it's an identity exercise. It's a really interesting one. It should be one. What I suggest we should do though is get a couple of these people and ask them, because in a way, here you're asking people who are in academia in some shape or form, who think about identity, and then see if people get to the same end game of identity as you did, because I think clearly that's what you had in mind. When you superimpose these people's identities, and identity being the picture, and I'm sure there was a fact you were saying, if I knew it was going to be like, I would have sent you a nicer picture, or a more predominant picture, or maybe not send you a picture at all. I think that's. So it would be really interesting to get into some of these 300 people, and afterwards, and say, what do you think, and see what they tell you, and crowdsource that kind of might lead to your next exhibition.
It was interesting to realize also that there were people who didn't know what they were subscribing for. So I had a friend who turned up here, and he realized there was a friend of his in the composition. So we sent her a picture, and she said, what's going on? What's happening? And he said, but you subscribe to this group. She said, okay, but I didn't didn't realize this was a full process. So she was researching the process, and then she realized what was going on. Hopefully, in the coming weekend, she will turn up as well, creating another conoscenza, getting to know someone new. Yes, I think something I would like to add to Clive is that I like the term disruption, and you made me think of the influencers as well, which is a very contemporary question, of people who are minute by minute curating their image and taking it, blowing it up to extremes, and like hoping that people out there would get the same vibe or keep them on a pedestal.
If you're talking about people who curate their identity all the time, okay? I mean, imagine if you've got multi-stop so-called influencers. You and I probably taught most of them, actually. Because you find out at university. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? We can get into talking about influencers on a different day, because we're on interesting ground, I think, over there. And I think the idea of the aesthetic and the beautiful and getting it mixed up and people not knowing what they signed up to is like us using all these platforms. And none of us ever read the terms and conditions, so we don't know. We don't know that as soon as you put something on Facebook or Instagram, it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the platform. That's also the undercurrent of what's going on over here. But since Pawlu mentioned influencers, yeah, I guess it could well be that some of these people who thought it was going to be one these exhibitions, I'm going to be famous for a day. It's like they were all thing, they probably thought they were going to have 300 pictures of it, and they call it their friends, and look, this is me. And it's exactly, and now it's like, where is me? I can't find me. Or if I can't find, well, it's in her eyes. I think he used my eyes. Maybe it was my eyes, but then what's underneath? And it's, at the end of the day, when I said it's about getting older and getting complex, you're going to die anyway, so who cares? You get for a period of time, they get wiped out. That's also the whole thing about being, erased. No? Yeah. It's almost like you have what is...
We're there.
It's an identity erased. No? I mean, yes. Think of how many people have been in this room before us. No? And they're not here. So you think of superimposing all of their identities. If we had a camera, then you'd end up with something like this. So, passage of time, I think, is also quite interesting. And the fact that time for you was, don't care, 10 people, mini Gigi, who turns up, log them on, that's it. That's your microcosm of time. That's a little moment. That's also, that's also, I think, interesting.
With regards to the process itself, in fact, I was also wondering whether the fact that it was done online through Facebook, and as Alex said before, you wouldn't have trusted it, not because it's Pawlu, but because it's Facebook, I presume. And also what has been mentioned about this disruption going on, but a creative disruption, of course. If you did this process but offline in an analog way, you went in a random street and you asked people and say, would you want to be in? I wonder if it would have you would have had that kind of response, which I think it would have been different because the impersonal, to an extent, the impersonal aspect of Facebook sometimes we are kind of trained to trust it more. And I don't know, it's weird. I think it's when you think about it.
It's been how many years now with Facebook? I think it's been 2008.
It was that. Was it?
No, way before.
Way before?
I think
mid-2000.
What's interesting, Pawlu, just to give us something else, is that in a way you piggybacked on the unconscious trust that people have on Facebook. Yes. So because you're right, I think if you shut down and walk down Republic Street and started asking people, I've got this project, here's a photo booth here, can you come in, I'm going to take a picture of you, and then I'm going to superimpose it with something else. I don't know what the take-up would have been. One.
So our trust of the social media is, and I mean, by the way, we all do it, okay? But I mean, anybody who's a parent, I mean, I've regularly had this conversation with my son. And he told me, why did you put up the picture of me on Facebook? I did not give you permission to do that. And in the US, you can actually sue your parents for, and Australia as well, for them having actually put up a picture on somewhere in a space. Because once it's there, it can't be erased. So Pawlu, in a way, made use of it consciously or subconsciously. Okay, because I think it was the ethics of it all. Which, and again, we're in an area now where the whole thing about digital ethics is like changing literally day by day. And I notice even from students of mine who want to do a project on Instagram, for instance. And then they find out that, you know, I'm looking at these so-called influencers, so you would think that all of those pictures are public property and belong to the influencers. In fact, they actually belong to Instagram. So you might actually need to get permission from someone who's faceless, and then you look at the terms and conditions, and then you're back into this whole spiral over here. Okay, so there's a social media trust element in it, there's a trust in Pawlu element. There's a trust in your friends element. Maybe people didn't know what Pawlu was.
And there were people who were invited by my peers.
Yes.
So they didn't know me, but they knew my.
And you can see it. You can see it in the order. That's what Clive and I were saying. Oh look, these guys know each other. So the crowd came in here, not knowing, but because maybe it's cool, you know.
And it was a 5-day period, so the call was so short that the mix was good enough. You know, I had people coming in. Like for example, I had a peer from Croatia. I said hello to Ivana. She's following. She said she would maybe, and she invited a few friends of hers from Croatia. So I had these 5 people from Croatia jumping in between my friends who were subscribing. So there's a mix.
So clusters of strong ties,
yeah.
Basically. So it could well be that you managed to get 10 people who knew each other super close. But I don't know. It could well be you got 5 on one side and 5 on the other side in a group on another.
There is one with just ladies.
There's one that's just ladies, for instance. And then it's easy. Yeah, which one?
Centerpiece.
This one. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so basically, yeah, and you could also say that you're playing a power game here, right? This is about the artist's design.
Yes, but also obviously, I mean, one of the prime motivators, I guess, for this is our yearning for proximity, right? To be able to get back, you know, in touch, physically.
Fading social distancing.
That's right, physically in touch with people, hugging people, you know what I mean. And in a way, this is what this is doing or achieving digitally. Okay, not in the real sense, but you literally, you know, placing people on top of each other. And so I think what is interesting also is to, you know, this yearning comes from the fact that we've been sort of isolated. We've been made to self-isolate. And you know, when you self-isolate, there's these two currents that go into each other. So how is this going to affect my identity, my personality? Okay, so from one side, you know, it can sort of consolidate my identity because there's no other disturbance, there's no one else, you know, disturbing me. I can just close myself up in my room, whether, you know, it's voluntarily or not. But I have the time, maybe the mental space to consolidate my identity, question who I am and all this. And at the same time, however, there's the countercurrent that without my interactions with the other, myself, my personality may also start to disintegrate, you know, because there's no recognition, no you know, interaction with the other, no reflection. So, in a sense, I think these works bring that tension up really nicely, because although they are sort of, you know, motivated by this, on the one hand, this imposition of isolation, which brings about this yearning for proximity, and then these, you know, two effects of that, where you have these people giving in their portrait, you know, giving in their picture, whatever, and allowing you sort of, to use this for your work, and at the same time, so they are sort of they're enforcing some sort of recognition and interaction with you and all that. So, but then at the same time, the result is this fuzzing out of all these identities. So again, the work sort of reflects the same structure in a way, the same process where identities are both, or can be both, consolidated and enforced by isolation, and at the same time can also disintegrate. And I think looking at this, you start getting this feeling. You start spotting people. Maybe spotting some significant features of some people. And moustache or accessory glasses or specs or some particular eyebrows or fringes. But at the same time, you cannot really get the face. So there's again that disturbance, sort of. It's like a slippery fish. You try to catch it, you try to
like ghosts. I mean, it could be like ghosts. It's almost like if you go to a graveyard, and it's like you have to give it. That's what my thing would look like if they've been buried for many years. And not merged on top of each other. Because you have to think in terms of the layers of history or whatever it is. Yeah, it's not an easy one to. I think it would be really interesting, Pawlu. Like you could almost have the antithesis of this, right? I would love to see the way you've got them in the catalogue. I can see them there, people's pictures next to each other. Okay, so that's another kind of game that you're playing, another little god game you're playing. Let's go there. Let me try and figure out which one is there. Okay. It's not like I see this girl or and that's so. It's almost like you could have one side of the wall potentially with that's what they want to tell you they are, and this is what you made them. So it's a bit of a Frankenstein thing going on. Okay, I mean, and I'm not saying the aesthetics that they all look ugly, because some of them are really interesting, and especially like some of these mouths, they're open. For example, the one in the middle of there, okay, and she's obviously happy or shouting or saying something, which would then tease you to go back. Let me find out who this person is. So again, this thing is also interesting in terms of going. Let me see what the artist created. Let me see what they think their image is, and then where is the truth? Is it somewhere in between? Which takes you back to the whole identity game, I guess.
No, definitely. It's. I think the first instinct of people that were involved would be to report themselves. But I think it would be. I wouldn't be honest if I say why I wouldn't do that. Of course, it's a natural approach.
I think something I would like to highlight as well is the fact that when the groups were forming on Facebook, I tried to start a conversation about their experience. So each group, I was like trying to, figure the 10 members of each group to start a conversation amongst themselves about their experience of the pandemic. Some did, most didn't, but I mean, I could keep working on that, these...
But did you tell them there were going to be groups of 10 or not?
Yes. Yes. In fact, I did screenshots of the groups, and I told them, like, you 10 are together, you 10 are together.
All right.
So people had the opportunity to, start a discussion. But obviously, Facebook is a very, very busy platform, and people get alienated, they don't get the messages unless you put money. So there was a...
It's not your platform, it's somebody else's platform. You too are hijacking Facebook's money-making platform. I mean, and also it's like people saying, I've got 2,000 friends on Facebook, and you make some announcement, or you think all those 2,000 people are saying, in fact, about 3% saying, you feed the beast. If you put some money on Facebook, everybody will see it. And other people we don't want to see it, especially if you put in portraits. I mean, I'm quite sure if you put in $50 in it, you would have had 2,000 people coming in for whatever reasons.
A suggestion I gave to the curator was to send out a PR saying that in this room up here there are 370 people.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
to create some.
you can lie too, but that's why I say
It's true, it's not
it's. I think this thing about who do you trust, and also misplacement of trust, because as I said, when I said how many people dropped out, very few did. And I suspect people dropped out for aesthetic reasons rather than anything else. Yeah. I thought I was going to have my portraits that way. Otherwise, I'm looking at the brochure you have there with people's pictures.
They dropped out before the process started.
So they dropped out when you explained to them what was going to happen, that it would about the superimposition,
No,
or they just felt uncomfortable.
I think when I was trying to start the conversations, just putting some questions in, and so maybe they thought it was.
I don't know this guy.
Yeah, I don't know this guy, what's going on, so.
Yeah. So that too tells you quite a lot about trust, isn't it? And yes, we do it all the time. I mean, we're putting up pictures all the time of our loved ones, where we've been, let alone that, if you've got a mobile phone, somebody knows we're here, let alone your phone is probably listening to. So, yeah, it's a sign of the times, as Prince would say, as well. But it's a sign of difficult times. And it could well be, as you were saying about that. People who are locked up thought it was a fun thing to do. Because everybody's lonely now. It used to be lonely, with music, all the lonely people in Eleanor Ring. It used to be at 2 o'clock in the morning, just look at everybody's green light next to each other on Facebook. So, how come all these people are awake? They've all their machines on, or okay. So you might also have piggybacked on some of that. It would be interesting to do it now.
Yeah.
And it will also be interesting to tell people what the name of the game is before. To see what the game is.
So what the result is.
Yeah. Yeah. And you might get a totally different result. Fewer numbers, maybe more numbers, maybe, I don't know.
What I find interesting also is that, I mean, getting back to the works themselves, to me it feels like each work has its particular mood. So some of them sort of are, in a way, cheerful or happy, some are, maybe a bit more serious, or maybe somewhere, I don't know, but that's something I'm projecting into, whether it was sort of there, or whether one would, two different people would get the same, maybe, yeah.
There is a randomness to the process, but obviously keep in mind that to me it was like a painter with 37 canvases in front of him.
Right.
So I didn't want to create to come out with the same mood on the whole set. So yes, as I went along producing the 37 pieces, I was experimenting myself, I was trying to highlight different elements, maybe body, physical elements, objects, and the backgrounds, the effects, for example, the star effect there, like some particular brands as well, various ones with brands showing. So yes, there's also the COVID banner, the COVID vaccine, it's in the rotating banner, the first one. So yes, that was an exercise which I went through as well, trying to make them more distinct.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think we're nearly.
Yes.
So my question is, okay, from what you said, I think there are some also ideas on how this can be looking further, maybe, and try to in different contexts. Do you have any plans in that regard?
I think I did it 2 days ago, but like for example, 2 days ago, these two painters came around, friends of mine, well established, and they suggested that they would pick one of these portraits and use them as a sitter. And they would repaint that person.
1 person out of 10, or get all 10.
They would paint what they're seeing. So they would probably come out with a face of a person, but that would be the result of 10 people. So that is, a next stage which other people came up with, not myself, but which I obviously enjoyed and appreciated, and I told them, yes, please, let's try to do it. But yes, even this suggestion, which you and there was another lady came up with, that I do the same process on the streets, calling people from the squares, from towns and villages, trying to see how engagement changes the style which Alex referred to, like in the photo booth, you try to ask people in, which creates a totally different dynamic. I think this is also focusing on the alienation. You know, so I guess I was a bit, you know, like the wise fox, finding people in their weakest moments and you know, get them to participate and say yes. And as I said, there were quite a few who I'm sure didn't realize that they don't know they're here, but they pressed join. So yes, they drank the beer, but they didn't know they were going to get drunk. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I'm not sure about the time yet.
I think we're trying to considering the
No, otherwise I won't share it. Okay, there's 8 minutes.
okay, 8 minutes left.
Okay, great. Trying to sense the time. Yeah, so another one last thing maybe that we can debate a bit as well is, and it hasn't been touched upon, but the element of